Good morning, viewers. Today I am present before you with the topic on Arnold's conception of poetry as a criticism of life. Before I begin the podcast, it is advisable that you use earplugs and also keep a notebook and a pen so that you can jot down the important points relating to this particular topic. So here I begin. In the famous essay on the study of poetry, Arnold defines poetry as a criticism of life. In this essay, he brings out his point of view. He says that poetry is a criticism of life under the conditions fixed for such a criticism by the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. Explaining his point of view, he says, truth and seriousness of substance and matter, felicity and perfection of diction and manner, as these are exhibited in the best poets, are what constitute a criticism of life made in conformity with the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. He again says that the greatness of a poet lies in his powerful and beautiful application of ideas to life, to the question how to live. Evidently, Arnold emphasizes the interpretative power of poetry and suggests that great poetry must be competent to answer the basic and eternal questions of life. Several points at once spring up from this definition. In the first place, the term how to live needs to be explained. How to live is the basic question of human life. Poetry seeks to answer this question by offering a poetic criticism of life. By the term criticism of life, Arnold means the presentation and interpretation of life. The function of poetry, according to Arnold, is to interpret life for us, to console us, to sustain us. The consolation and stay will be of power in proportion to the power of criticism of life, and the criticism of life will be of power in proportion as the poetry conveying it is excellent rather than inferior, sound rather than unsound or half sound, true rather than untrue or half true. Referring to the basic question how to live, the author Arnold says that it is the question which most interests every man and with which, in some way or the other, he is perpetually occupied. Hence, great poetry deals with those human actions that possess an inherent interest in themselves and which are to be communicated in an interesting manner by the art of the poet. The poet's concern is with those actions which most powerfully appeal to the great human affections and those elementary feelings which subsist permanently in the race and which are independent of time. In answering to those basic truths of life, poetry answers to the question how to live. Poetry as the criticism of life must deal with morals. The question how to live is itself a moral question. A large sense is of course to be given to the term moral. Whatever bears upon the question how to live comes under it. It follows therefore that Arnold does not take the term moral in the pedantic, professional or puritanic sense. Whatever touches on life is moral. The term life again is to be taken in its widest sense. Thus, taking the terms moral and life in their widest sense, Arnold says that a poetry of revolt against moral ideas is a poetry of revolt against life. A poetry of indifference towards moral ideas is a poetry of indifference towards life. It was in this sense again that Voltaire remarked that no nation has treated in poetry moral ideas with more energy and depth than the English nation. And he adds, there is the great merit of the English poets. This is the same thing as the noble and profound application of ideas to life. Arnold even introduces a very novel and practical device to detect the order of excellence in a given poem. He calls it the touchstone method. Critics give themselves great labor, he writes in the study of poetry, to draw out what in the abstract constitutes the characteristics of a high quality of poetry. It is much better simply to have recourse to concrete examples to take specimens of poetry of the very highest quality, and to say the characters of a high quality of poetry are what is expressed there. They are far better recognized by being felt in the verse of the master than by being perused in the prose of the critic. So, this was all about how Arnold considers poetry to be the criticism of life, and how he introduces the touchstone method in his famous essay, The Study of Poetry, so as to implement the entire idea of how literature can be made better. I hope this podcast proved to be of help to each one of you. Please mention your questions and observations in the comment section below. Please do like, share and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click on the bell icon for latest update. Thank you for your valuable time. Here's wishing you a great day ahead.